A sneer from the woman who left you hits harder than a slap, especially when it lands in front of your boss, with your toddler clinging to your leg like a lifeline. But the world flips on its axis when the person at the top decides to rewrite your story in front of everyone who ever doubted you. The collar of my shirt felt like a noose. It was a cheap synthetic blend, the kind that made you sweat in an air-conditioned room, and right now it was suffocating me. The towering atrium of Sterling Global smelled like lemon polish, recycled air, and the sharp, invisible sting of corporate ambition. And cutting through all of that was the unmistakable scent of my son's sticky apple juice dried into the fabric of my pants. Daddy sticky. I looked down. Leo, my 4-year-old, had a death grip on the hem of my trousers. His tiny fingers, coated in a film of toddler grime and fruit snacks, had left a dark, damp stain just below my knee. He was a solid, warm weight of exhaustion, overwhelmed by the vaulted ceilings and the click of expensive shoes echoing around us. I know, buddy. Just a few more minutes. I patted my pocket, searching for a baby wipe I knew wasn't there. We just drop off these files and then it's pizza, the really good kind with the pepperoni that curls into little cups. Bringing a toddler to the quarterly executive mixer was career suicide. I knew it. My fellow analyst in the finance department knew it. The security guard who watched me fight a collapsing stroller through the revolving doors definitely knew it. But the nanny had bilayed 30 minutes before my shift ended, and these quarterly projections had to be hand-delivered to the executive floor. There was no plan B, there was just me, Leo, and the faint, god-awful smell of stale Cheerios living in the bottom of my satchel. I pried his hand off my leg, ignoring the new smudge on my gray wool pants, and hoisted him onto my hip. My back, already tight from a week of late nights, gave a sharp twinge of protest. I shifted my heavy briefcase to my other hand, my palms slick with nervous sweat. Well, look who's trying to be a father and an executive at the same time. The voice cut through the lobby's low hum like a shard of glass. I knew that voice. It was the same voice that used to whisper promises in the dark, the same voice that 2 years ago had coldly explained that she was too ambitious to be a mother. I turned slowly. The voice was familiar, but the arrogance in the lobby was something new. What was she even doing here? Paige was standing by the reception desk, holding a champagne flute. She looked flawless in a silk dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her hair was perfect, her makeup was sharp, and on her arm was a man in a suit vest who looked like he'd never had to wipe a counter in his life. He was one of those venture capital types who mistake volume for intelligence, a guy named Brett who had already introduced himself to me 3 times at different work functions, never remembering my face. "Paige," I said. My voice came out flat. I forced a cough to clear my throat. "What are you doing here?" "Brett's firm is looking at the new tech acquisition," she said, taking a delicate sip of her champagne. Her eyes drifted from my face, down to the stain on my trousers, and then to Leo, who was currently trying to burrow his head into my shoulder, overwhelmed by the tension. I didn't realize Sterling Global had a daycare in the lobby. Her voice dripped with a faux pity that was somehow worse than outright mockery. "The sitter canceled," I said. The words came out as a defense, a flimsy shield I hated holding. "I'm just dropping off the quarterly hard copies." "Still scrambling, Caleb," she sighed, shaking her head. It wasn't angry, it was worse, it was tired, still showing up late and making excuses. It was a familiar attack, but the sting was just as sharp as the first time she'd used it. Brett let out a short, guttural laugh. "You'd think a guy with a job this demanding would have a better system. Guess that's why you're still running files and not upstairs making deals." Heat flooded my cheeks. It burned from my collar up to my ears. I wanted to say something devastating. I wanted to be the quick-witted protagonist in a movie. Instead, I just tightened my grip on my son and my briefcase. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, pathetic rhythm. "It's temporary," I mumbled. "We're leaving soon." "It's sad, Caleb," Paige said, stepping closer. Her perfume, something floral and overpowering, mixed with the artificial air. "You drag him around like a shield to prove you're still fighting. You always had to do it the hard way. It was exhausting then, and honestly, it's just embarrassing now." Her pity was a weapon sharper than her anger. She wasn't screaming. She was just speaking in that casual, conversational tone that dismantled you piece by piece. It was like she was commenting on the weather, not the ruin of my dignity. "I'm not using him as a shield," I whispered. I could feel the world shrinking around me, the judgment of strangers pressing in from all sides. Then the chaos erupted. "Down, Daddy, down," Leo squirmed, kicking his legs. one tiny sneaker connected with the rusty latch on my briefcase. The metal gave way with a loud clack. The case swung open, and 300 pages of meticulously organized financial data exploded across the polished marble floor like a white blizzard. A heavy silence fell. Leo started to wail, the loud, breathless cry of a toddler who knows he's caused a disaster. I just stood there, paralyzed, staring at the papers scattered at the feet of the woman who had abandoned us. Months of work, late nights typing with one hand while my son slept on my chest, all ruined. "Oh, Caleb," Paige breathed. She didn't laugh. She just sounded profoundly, intensely exhausted by my existence. "Look at this mess, look at your life." The fight drained out of me. I put Leo down. He sobbed into my leg. I dropped to my knees. The marble was cold through my cheap pants. I scrambled frantically, my hands shaking, grabbing at the papers, mixing up the order. My breath came in ragged, pathetic gasps. I was on my hands and knees, picking up the pieces of my life at the feet of my ex-wife. I had officially hit rock bottom, but then the game changed. Wait. The word was quiet, not a shout. But it carried an undercurrent of absolute authority that made the entire lobby freeze. It was the voice of someone who didn't ask for attention. They simply expected the world to stop spinning when they spoke. The rhythmic, piercing click-clack of heels echoed across the lobby. The cluster of executives parted like the Red Sea. I looked up, my face burning with shame. Alexandra Sterling was walking toward us. She was the CEO, the Billionaire founder, the woman who was Sterling Global. She wore a power suit that looked like armor. Her dark hair was pulled into a severe knot. Her eyes were a startling, icy blue. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't look at Paige. She looked at me. "Mr. Vance," she said. She knew my name. I was a mid-level analyst in a company of thousands, and she knew my name. I scrambled up, clutching a disorganized heap of paper to my chest. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Sterling. The latch broke." She stopped 2 feet away. Up close, she smelled like cedar and something electric. She didn't look at the mess on the floor. She looked at my face, at the humiliation burning in my cheeks, and then down at Leo, who had stopped crying and was staring up at her, intimidated. "Are you all right, Caleb?" Her tone was clinical, but she used my first name. "No, yes, the reports." Finally, she shifted her gaze. She looked at Paige. The temperature in the room dropped. "And who," Alexandra said, her voice dangerously quiet, "is causing a disruption in my lobby?" She wasn't just defending an employee, she was marking territory. Paige's perfect posture faltered. She pasted on a bright, networking smile. "Ms. Sterling, it's an honor. I'm Paige, and this is Brett from—" "I didn't ask for a resume," Alexandra cut her off. "I asked why you are standing over one of my top financial architects while he is on his hands and knees." Paige's smile strained. "We were just catching up. Caleb is my ex-husband. He's just having a clumsy moment. You know how he gets." Alexandra tilted her head. The silence was brutal. You could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. "I know how he gets," Alexandra repeated slowly. The words were soft, but they felt like a blade. Paige shifted her weight. "I just meant he's always been a little out of his depth. Bringing a child to a corporate event, dropping his papers, it's just—" "Caleb," Brett tried to step in. "Ms. Sterling, we're actually here to discuss." Alexandra didn't look at him. She kept her gaze on Paige. "Caleb Vance is the reason our Q4 forecasting was 99.8% accurate. He is the reason we caught the irregularity in the European logistics merger last month. He holds together the back end of a division that generates more wealth than your boyfriend's entire venture portfolio." The revelation hit me like a freight train. She knew everything. I stopped breathing. My manager always took the credit. To hear her recite my victories in the middle of the lobby felt like stepping into a dream. "So," Alexandra continued, stepping closer to Paige, "when I see the man who secures my bottom line being sneered at by someone who has never done anything harder than deciding which handbag matches her shoes, I find myself deeply, personally annoyed." Paige's mouth opened. No sound came out. Her ego, that fortress of vanity and entitlement, was dissolving under the heat of Alexandra's disdain. "There's a misunderstanding," Paige stammered. "We were married, I know him." "You knew a version of him," Alexandra said, her voice dropping into a low, predatory purr. "Clearly, he has upgraded." Then she turned away from Paige, dismissing her existence entirely. She stepped into my personal space. She reached out and took my hand. Her grip was firm, possessive. The weight of her hand sent a jolt up my arm. She interlaced her fingers with mine. "Caleb," she said, her voice entirely different now. The ice was gone, replaced by a warm, husky timbre. "You should have called me. I would have come to your floor to get these myself." I stared into her eyes, my brain was short-circuiting. I didn't know the script, but my gut told me to follow her lead. I didn't want to keep you waiting, I managed, my voice scraping out of a dry throat. Alexandra smiled. It was a small, private smile. I never mind waiting for you. The implication was heavy, deliberate, and devastatingly clear. She was claiming me. I heard a sharp intake of breath from Paige. I didn't look at her, but I could feel the radiation of her absolute humiliation. Alexandra finally glanced down at Leo, who was watching the tall lady holding his dad's hand with wide eyes. "And who is this?" she asked, her tone softening. "This is Leo," I said, my voice steadying. Alexandra knelt down. The billionaire CEO, in a suit worth more than my life, crouched on the dusty marble floor. She looked Leo in the eye. "Hello, Leo, your dad is a very important man, did you know that?" Leo blinked and shook his head. "Well, he is," she said softly. She stood up, pulling me closer. She looked back at Paige and Brett. They looked like statues left out in the rain. "Security," Alexandra said, her voice calm but absolute. A man in a dark suit materialized. "Please have someone collect Mr. Vance's papers and bring them to my office. And escort this couple out. Their firm is no longer in consideration for the acquisition. I don't do business with people who lack basic human decency." "Now wait a minute," Brett barked. "I just did," Alexandra said. "Escort them out." Paige looked at me. Her eyes were wide, panicked, pleading. The illusion of superiority was gone, leaving behind a desperate woman who realized she'd thrown away a winning lottery ticket. She wanted the old Caleb to save her. I looked back at her, feeling the tight grip of Alexandra's hand and the sticky weight of my son against my leg. For the first time in 2 years, I felt nothing. No anger, no sorrow, just indifference. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's silence. I didn't say a word, I turned away. Alexandra tugged my hand. "Come on, Caleb, let's go to my office. We have numbers to review and I believe Leo was promised pizza." We walked to the private elevator. Behind me, I heard Brett arguing with security and the humiliating silence of my ex-wife. The doors slid shut, cutting off the chaos with surgical precision. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The air was perfectly filtered. My ears popped as we shot upward. Alexandra let go of my hand. The loss of contact was jarring. She stepped back, leaning against the rail, pulling out her phone and typing. The possessive woman from the lobby was gone, replaced by the untouchable CEO. "What was going on?" "Ms. Sterling," I started. "Alexandra," she corrected, not looking up. After that performance downstairs, Ms. Sterling would make the footage look incredibly fake. "Alexandra, you didn't have to do that, the stunt, you humiliated a potential partner." "I illuminated a parasite," she replied, pocketing her phone. She looked at me, her gray eyes locking on mine. "There's a difference. Brett's firm brings nothing to the table. I was going to cut them out anyway. Your ex just gave me an excuse to enjoy it. So I was just a convenient weapon?" "No," she tilted her head. "You were the asset being undervalued." I simply corrected the market. The elevator chimed. The doors opened directly into her office. It was massive, a glass box suspended above the city. The view was dizzying. The office was aggressively minimalist, dark wood, black leather, slate. It was a physical manifestation of power. I stood awkwardly, hyper-aware of the sticky stain on my trousers. "Daddy," Leo whimpered, burying his face in my shoulder. "Tired." "I know, buddy," I whispered. The adrenaline was draining, leaving me bone-tired. "Put him on the couch," Alexandra said. "It's stain-resistant." I hesitated, then laid Leo down on a massive leather couch. He curled into a ball, his thumb in his mouth. I covered him with my jacket. When I turned, Alexandra was pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid from a decanter. She handed one to me. "I can't," I said. "I'm driving." "You're not driving anywhere, your hands are shaking." She was right. A fine tremor ran through my fingers. I took the glass. The scotch was smooth, burning a warm path down my throat. It hit my empty stomach like a furnace. Why was she doing this? What did she want? "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "I'm a data analyst, I don't matter to you." Alexandra took a slow sip. "You think very little of yourself." "I think practically. I'm a divorced mid-level employee with a messy life. You're a billionaire. People like you don't look at people like me." She set her glass down. "You really think I didn't know who you were before today? Your manager, Richard, is an idiot. 6 months ago, I started pulling the raw data files myself." She walked closer. "I know your login timestamps. I know you're in the system at 2 a.m. I know you rebuilt the predictive algorithm for the logistics chain even though Richard took the credit." She stopped a foot away. When I saw the man whose brain I rely on being abused by a woman whose greatest achievement is dating a man who wears a vest, I stepped in. Yes. I asked, my voice barely a whisper, was holding my hand part of the correction. She paused. For the first time, the CEO mask slipped. Something human, genuinely uncertain crossed her face. No, she said quietly, that was just for me. The elevator chimed. A security guard stepped in, holding my briefcase and a greasy, red-stained pizza box. The delivery, Ms. Sterling. Put it on the table. He placed them on the glass conference table and fled. Alexandra opened the pizza box. A cloud of garlicky steam rose into the pristine air. It was absurd, it was beautiful. Leo, I called. He was out cold. I looked back at her. He's asleep. Let him sleep. She grabbed a slice, folded it, and took a bite. I watched the billionaire eat corner store pizza. My brain struggled to process it. I took a slice and stood across the table. We ate in silence. She really did a number on you, didn't she? She asked. She just held up a mirror. I was boring. I worked too much. I wasn't ambitious enough for her. You think keeping the machine running isn't ambition? Her tone sharpened. Caleb, the world is full of visionaries who can't execute a pivot table. People who move the needle usually just break the compass and rely on people like you to fix it. She tossed her napkin down. She wanted you to feel small so she could feel big. It's a common psychological defect. She was wrong. I wasn't small. I was holding it all together. She walked around the table, standing next to me. We both turned to look out the window at the glittering grid of the city. I'm tired of the noise, Caleb, the posturing. I watch you in the data, you're quiet, you care about what's true, not what looks good, I respect that. I'm a mess, I said, this is my reality. I make mac and cheese on Tuesdays and worry about my electric bill. I know. She reached out, brushing my sleeve. It's the most grounded thing I've seen in 5 years. I turned to face her, there was no dramatic rush, it was a quiet collision. You really want to step into this mess. I do exactly what I want, she murmured, her eyes dropping to my mouth. And I rarely make calculation errors. She closed the inch between us. Her kiss was firm, deliberate, and real. It tasted of smoke and scotch. I closed my eyes, my hand resting on her waist. When we broke apart, the silence felt different. It was a sanctuary. She looked past me at the couch. Now, she said, her voice dropping back into a comfortable rhythm. How do we get a sticky 4-year-old into my car without waking him up? I looked at my son, then back at the woman who had just rewired my universe. I laughed. We carry him. We, she repeated, liking the sound of it. All right, Mr. Vance, let's get to work. The stain on my pants didn't matter. The cheap suit was just fabric. The ghost of my ex-wife's mockery had vanished. I wasn't a failure. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And for the first time in years, the math finally added up. In the end, she didn't give me a new life. She just showed me I already had one worth living. If this story hit home for you, don't just walk away. Hit that like button to support my channel and share this with anyone who needs a reminder that the best revenge is simply leveling up your life. Drop a comment below. What would you have said to Paige in that lobby? Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our daily stories of karma, revenge, and redemption. See you in the next video.